Good afternoon, everyone. Or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you spending the time with us over the next hour and a half. As Tafik mentioned, a little bit of housekeeping. There are some questions that came in earlier. We're offering a way to text us questions during this period. We expect the presentation to be about 30 to 40 minutes. And then after giving enough time to answer some of the questions that have already come in, and we'd be grateful to get any more from you as if you can articulate those into a text message now. If that can't happen, if you're having difficulties, this presentation will be posted on the city's website where you can, of course, articulate a question and send it in that we'll, of course, respond to in due course. So I'd like to again introduce the group that's joined me from IBI Group, the consultant. We've been on this project from the onset. It's a very challenging project, but very important to the city, and we're happy to be part of it. So today you'll be hearing from myself, speaking through some of the details. Pat Becker, who is our specialist that accommodates us with PICs. She's done more than I can count, for sure. She'll be speaking throughout this presentation as well. Fadi Shwihad, who's local to Hamilton area. He's our lead designer and is a key component of this project, and as well as Hadiya Hashtraudi, who is our project coordinator. And without her, I don't think this project would be going as great as it is. So thank you to them joining us as well, and you'll hear from them as well as city personnel throughout, and we'll be trying to answer all the questions as best we can today. And if we can't answer something, we'll definitely get back to you, because some of them get into specific nature on what's right in front of my property, etc. And we'd expect some of those things we'll have to get back to you on, because we won't have that detail during this public information center discussion. So Pat, I'll let you start with the first number of pages, and then I'll jump in for a little bit more of the design.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Let's move to the next slide. So the purpose of doing this public engagement, this is a little different. It's not, we're not at the beginning of the project. We're more into the design side and moving into construction. So the purpose of what we're doing today is to give you a project background, to give you a good understanding of what's going to be done, an overview of the proposed works that we're going to be doing. We're sharing kind of the existing conditions that we've found, what we're expecting, any kind of issues, as well as the proposed mitigation measures. We'll definitely go through that in probably the greatest level of detail for you. We're also going to get an opportunity, as been mentioned, to have input either, as we've commented, that can come in either ahead, it's coming in today, or there's opportunity afterwards. And then at the very end of this, we're going to talk about the next steps so that you have an understanding of where we're going and how you can be involved as well on the level of communication. Okay, let's next slide. So the agenda is very much kind of the purpose of this. We're going through the project background. We'll give you the project area, the project description, the anticipated construction impacts and mitigation measures. Probably key and critical to some of you will be traffic management plan, as well as looking at potential and discussing potential groundwater impacts on any natural features and private wells. We'll give you a summary of the mitigation measures, and then the project schedule and next step as we discussed. Next slide. So on the project background, the reason that we're at the phase that we are and that we're moving into finishing the detailed design and we'll be starting construction is because a master plan has already been done on this. The water and wastewater master plan went through phases 1 and 2. So they were done and finished in 2006 and 2016. And the purpose of it is support development of the Airport Employment Growth District. So we looked at servicing that, that's all being done, and we came forward with having the preferred alternative. And now we're at the point of now developing that into detailed design. That master plan is a critical component for the city, and it's related to the growth related integrated development strategy. Council adopted that in May 2006, and we've been pushing forward with this. So this is a key project for the city to see and to move into construction. Next slide. So this is from the master plan, and you can see with all of the colors, and if you when you download, you'll be able to zoom in even a little better. But the highlighted pink area is the Dickenson sanitary trunk sewer. That is what we're looking at doing, extending from the edge on the airport land, extending eastward. So the part that's kind of in the bright pink, the fuchsia, outlines the Dickenson sanitary sewer, and it's following along Dickenson Road. So some of it has already been done. We're now doing this phase of it, and looking at how we're going to do the construction and how we're going to deal with any kind of potential impacts and mitigation measures. Next slide. I'll ask Gord to now go through looking at the project area and the project description for you.
So as was mentioned, we would be, there's a proposed sanitary sewer, what we call a trunk sewer, that's quite deep in the ground for a good portion of the 10-kilometer run. And there will be a portion that is a little bit shallower to the ground. And there's different construction methods being used between one section and the other. So if you look at item 1 at the bottom end, that's our bottom of the line. So everything will be flowing from Upper James down to Regional Road 56. At Regional Road 56 is a line that already exists that we'll be tapping into. So that line was already constructed a few years back, and it is in service today. So we'll be connecting at a quite deep location underground in the bedrock or in the hard rock below. We'll be connecting at the location. In fact, some of the site is still cornered off in that location where that shaft was originally and where we'll be going back on the, I believe it's the, on the page there, it will be the southeast corner. So for what the design is right now at the stage of 90%, and what that means is that we're getting near the final stages of the design of how this we're proposing to construct this. We've done this many times. We're quite good at tunneling. That's why the city has procured IBI. The importance of this, as was mentioned earlier, is of course to service the airport lands. It is in this case just a trunk. However, in the open cut section, there will be a small section of a local water main just connecting two dead ends together, which is a secondary part of the project. The primary reason for this is a major, large 1,500 millimeter and a section of 1,200 millimeter that will be going from Upper James along Dickenson, a short section on Trinity, and then the rest on Golf Club Road. The portion that you see in green, in kind of the lime or lighter green color, with all the numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, these sections are going to be done in a tunnel construction methodology. There are different tunneling construction methodologies that we'll be using for the different sections, but all of them will be deep in the ground and will be done in the tunnel construction. What we've designed is that at the locations where these numbers are, there would be compounds at those locations. What these compounds are locations that will be sectioned off to allow the contractor to create a shaft, a vertical shaft to get down, to get their tunneling equipment down there, tunnel the section, bring out the spoils out of that compound, or sorry, the material that they're mining out of that compound, and then insert the pipe into that through that compound as well. So there would be a lot less construction that you'll see above ground other than at those compounds. Then, of course, later on, for the purposes of operating, there will be additional maintenance holes that would have to be placed between those compounds at specific locations in order to be able to maintain this sewer system once it's in service. So we would have a compound at every one of those numbers from 1 to 9, and they would be different arrangements depending on where they are. In the case of Regional 156, the compound would be off the road in the southeast corner where the original compound was of the previous section that was already designed and constructed years ago. Some of the other compounds that you see along the road would be right in the road, and would be there would be a need for a traffic management plan and detour plans and so forth, because we would actually be having to cut off a section of road, use it for the compound. So residents would have to either go one way or the other, and they would be completely understanding of this due to notifications that would be done door to door. So you'd have advance notice of when we'd be requiring to do certain traffic management. And when we say traffic management, we mean car, of course, traffic moving in and out, which would be more localized at that point, and also pedestrian traffic as well. So as we get through these tunnel sections, each one that's done, we would be closing them behind us. So we would not have all these openings and all these compounds at all times, because that would not be possible for movement of residents in and out of their homes. So we want to make sure that as we open 2 of them for the purposes of tunneling, and we move on to the next 2, that we're closing the ones behind us. So the pipes would be inserted, the area would be complete, and then we'd move on to the next sections. As we get nearing the sections of 8 and 9, you see a section that's now black and green, and that's an open cut section. And what that means is that the construction would be a different type of method. We have a couple of photos for you in the next slides that will show that, but it would be done with what they call a backhoe, a trench box, and they would be inserting pipes from the top of the road. And at that same time, when they finish the 1200 sewer, that is quite deep, you know, in the ranges of 7-8 meters deep, they will also be doing a local water main at the location as well. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Sidi? So this is what typically you would see if you were to get in the compound. So if I'll start with the tunnel, because the majority, 7.5 kilometers of this alignment is tunneling. And this is just one type of tunneling that exists. In fact, the picture that you see there is what we call microtunneling. And we're jacking the pipe into position. So there is some sections of this alignment near the end, more 7, 8, and 9 on the previous slide, that would be done in this type of format. And you would see a shaft that goes down quite neat, and this this equipment would all be inserted through this one shaft. Of course, above ground, there would be a compound. There would be a little compound for storage of pipe, removal of spoils, or the material that's being mined out, and then, of course, grouting and so forth that goes to complete the system. Above ground would also, you would see a crane potentially that would be lowering the pipe into place and lowering some of the mining equipment into place, and taking what we call muck cars, or the spoils that are taken out would be taken out of that same shaft. Very similar process for the other TBM type situation. The only difference is we mine the complete length of tunnel, and then later we come and install the pipe, where in microtunneling it's installed at the same time. As you go over to the other photo, it's a typical location, and this is exactly what you will see in the winter months, of course, not the summer months, but you would see what you see there is a backhoe. You can see its bucket, and you can see the trench box that would be used above ground. And in this particular, we picked this photo because we would expect very similar here as well. You see a ditch on the one side where the gentleman is walking by there. There'd be a ditch. There would be trees further back. We have to, of course, look at the overhead wires that exist as well. And in this case, I think it was slightly smaller diameter pipe there. You can see a pipe on the left side of the photo, but essentially, I believe that was a 900 or 1050 pipe, and we're looking at a 1200 pipe, but very similar circumstance, what we would see and envision there. A portion of the road would be open to local traffic. There would be no through traffic during this period, but there would be local traffic. And this would have, of course, there would be traffic managers. So you would see cones and so forth if it is open to the public, which at this particular site, it was not, but you would see cones lined up if it was opened. If it's a complete closure, then there would be a road closure sign, there would be detour plans and signage, and all these would be provided to the local residents as we move from stage to stage. So you would have advance notice of what was going on the site for the full 10-kilometer stretch. And we would also be posting this on websites, at city websites as well. Next slide, please. This is an important slide, but it is a little bit, a lot of words in there, and I apologize for that, but you have the ability to go back and look at this again and again if you'd like. After this live session, we're posting this on the city website, and we want to be able to give you the opportunity to go back. But as we go through these points, these are our anticipated construction impacts and mitigation measures. And we talk about them a few times. We'll talk about it on this slide, and they're brought up again later on. So one of the first things is traffic impact. So we are doing and it's really going to be road closures for through traffic, but local traffic, of course, will have full access to their residents and so forth. We are preparing complete traffic control plans and detour plans where necessary for people that do have to go through this area. So those are, we of course anticipated all this, and complete traffic management will be covered. When we say traffic, it's not only about the actual cars and bicycles going through, but the pedestrians as well. How will pedestrians get through this area? So we are implementing complete control plans that would provide access to and from residents throughout the section of pipeline. And again, keeping in mind that only sections would be done at a time. So this traffic impact would be mitigated by section, and you'd be fully engaged and aware of what sections are being done when. Part of that also comes with the safety of pedestrians and cyclists during construction. So those same traffic control plans and barriers and detours would be there for the public at large and the pedestrians and the residents in the area. Another impact that we see is in these areas would be odor and gases. So we are getting into quite deep sections of construction, and during those deep sections that we're doing, which are more at the bottom end near 56, where we'll be tunneling, we'll have monitoring programs in place. So we'll be looking for if there's any odors and so forth that may exist. So we're going to be looking for these. And of course, if you ever smell sulfur water, which is something that's deep in the ground there, it's a rotten egg smell. So one of the things that we'll be looking at, and if you have very deep wells in the area, if any of the residents have deep wells, you may get this smell before your treatment facility or your system that you have at your home. And the reason for that is because the sulfur in the deep waters is natural to the environment. So if these do come up, they would smell like a rotten egg smell. So watching this. We're doing analyzing this as part of the design process, and we're going to be looking for this. So as wells are deep, you would get this sulfur water. We don't expect to get it during the mining, but if we do get it, we'll be dealing with it, mitigating it, etc. Potential impact to the water courses and the wetlands in the area. We're working very closely with the MPCA, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and we're talking with them about, of course, erosion measures, sediment control plans, and of course, we're also talking to them about what we're going to be doing, some of the monitoring programs that we're going to put in place. Other things that would be impacted that we're looking at and talking very closely with is the school bus routes, and also with that, disruption to waste collection. As certain sections of roads are closed, there is going to be a disruption to the waste collection. So there will be a need for the contractor to take them as where the residents would place them typically and move them outside the zone that's closed. So proper waste collection can still progress. So we'd be working closely with the residents. Residents would just put them in their local spot where they would always put them. The contractor will then take them and put them at the edge of the portion of road that is closed. And we'd be talking closely with the collection agency, whoever it is in the area, if it's the city or if the city has a program where it's a private that does it for the city. In either cases, that would be taken outside of that vicinity. And we are, of course, looking at that, again, going back to school bus routes. If there is any, we'd be looking at how that's going to happen and where the drop and pickup zones would be outside an area that's closed. Some of the other items that we're looking at closely is there is a Dickenson rail trail. We want to make sure that that's left open during this. And one of those things is we are doing trenchless through that section. So it should be fine to continue to run that trail. And both our compounds are not at those locations of the shaft locations. The compounds should not affect any of those, that trail. We also have looked at mature trees in the area, and we're looking at an inventory of the trees. We're looking at a plan to mitigate and protect trees as best we can. There are going to be some that need to be pruned. There's going to be some that roots will be affected in areas of potentially the compound or the open cut section. And we're going to try to mitigate as much as we can, but we expect that some trees will be damaged or need to be removed because of the effect to the roots. But we are looking at all those as well. Vibration is something else that we have to take into account. So one of the things that will be done, a program that will be done early on before the contractor commences major construction, is that there will be an inspection survey done by a company. There's a few of them out there that usually come in and they offer a pre-construction condition assessment of your structure, your home, mostly due to the concrete or brickwork, etc. And they would do that from the outside, and if you accept, from the inside as well in your basements. And that is done there to protect the homeowner and the contractor, if you will, in the city, from a perspective of what was there before, and then if there is an issue that you may see after all the work that's done there, that same company would come to do an independent review and then compare the pre to the post. And that's something that we'd be looking at in this area as well, because of the vicinity of this. Although we are doing deep tunnel work and it's quite deep in the ground at the compounds and at the open cut sections, there definitely would be vibration that would come within reason, but it would be there due to the compaction requirements of putting back the road eventually. I've already talked a little bit about the potential impacts to the natural environment features and water courses, but the other thing that we would expect is that the private wells, lessons learned are that private wells will potentially be affected for a period of time. And we have a plan in place. We have been monitoring many wells in the area, and we'll show you a couple slides shortly about that. We've also done private well surveys. If anybody missed that, those door-to-door surveys that were sent out and wants to have their private well surveyed, we absolutely can do it. Construction is not starting yet, so we can add you to the list and get you moving on that survey. A number of them have been done along the route, but we're more than happy to do additional ones if you've missed some of the notices that have come out. Next slide, please. This slide is just kind of explaining and showing you some of the expected signage that would be put. This is all regulated. These are the typical signs that you see. Clearly, they're not black and white, they're orange and black. But essentially, these are the types of signage you will see when we do have road closure signs, local traffic only, no through, no turn, this, etc. So the plans are developed at a 90%. They're being reviewed by all the specialists right now, but we anticipate that this will be going to final. They'll be mandated by the contractor, and they'll be watched closely by city representatives as well as IBI representatives, because we're there to represent the city throughout all the stages of construction. So we expect that, firstly, residents, the safety is paramount, right? We're trying to minimize impact to the traffic, but I mean, the resident safety in and out, for you to leave your homes, want to go get groceries, go to work. We want to make sure you're allowed to do that at all times of this construction. And these signages are there to help that happen. So we've already designed all this, and we're going to implement it to the contractor that they follow these to a T, and that we're always being safe to anybody that's coming in and out of the area. Next slide, please. Sorry. So we've done some major assessments of the water. We've done a lot of drillings of borehole. We have a hydrology experts, which are experts of groundwater and how groundwater affects above water and well water. So we have something called a zone of influence. And that zone of influence, as you can see here, is the yellow line or yellow circular. It looks, actually, someone said this whole thing looks like a guitar, and it does, I guess. But so we expect the zone of influence to be more in the tunnel sections, which were deep into the rock. That zone of influence in that rock is groundwater that's underneath that we'll be to some degree taking out to be able to do this construction tunneling, and then it will be replenishing itself. It is disconnected from the surface water. So all the creeks and streams and so forth above, they're disconnected from the groundwater that we're dealing with down below. However, they may be connected to your wells, depending on how deep they are. So there is a plan in place that if the wells are affected in any major impact to wells, that the city will be providing tanks to mitigate, to give you access to clean drinking water during the period of time when your wells may be impacted. And again, we're mitigating these as best we can, but we do expect that there will be some influence to the wells that are shallower in nature, or the ones that are extremely deep in nature. So we are anticipating for this, through the contract of whoever the contractor is selected, will have these ready to go the minute any wells are impacted. So we're going to be watching this very closely. We're going to be monitoring very closely. Part of this, and the important parts of this, is the door-to-door well survey. So if you didn't catch on to the notices that were out there, and you haven't been part of the well-to-well survey, door-to-door survey, excuse me, please do, because the more we know ahead of time, the better we can implement these measures in place to mitigate very quickly if there is any effect to any wells. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we just, again, it's a very similar slide, but these are just showing you all the monitoring wells, all the ones that are black and white, the blue and white, as well as the I guess that's hot pink and white. I'm not sure what color that is, but as well as the proposed watercourse monitoring stations that are now been implemented as well. So all these are being monitored, including the ones that are far off our site. We're going to be doing a long-term well monitoring, not only everything that we've been doing since 2019. It says 18 there, but actually it started more in, we started tracking it, but we started doing some on-site more in 19, 2000. We are still doing them now in 21, and we'll continue to do them during construction, throughout construction. So there is quite a large amount of data that is coming in. So for us to monitor these, and they're at different levels of some are shallow, some are very deep. So we want to be able to watch these very closely. And if we anticipate that there is going to be a drawdown, for example, somewhere well off the site, based on the depth of that, we can envision if that's going to affect any local wells along the route. So we're hoping to do that to be kind of ahead of the game. But again, we'll be talking very closely with the residents throughout this construction period. And when you do see any influence to your well, if you do, we'll be there to support you throughout. Next slide, please. Back to you, Pat.
So we're not, the next two slides. Oh, just waiting for it to come up. There we go. Is a summary of all of the mitigation measures that Gord walked through. That the slide that he had with the 9 different points, and then he had 10 points of impacts and mitigation measures. To make it a little easier for you to follow and to kind of get a summary of it, we've put it here. So this page and the next page, we've summarized just the mitigation measures are. So if you just want to brief yourself and look at it again, the intent of this presentation is that you can go and look at it at leisure after this session. We wanted to make sure you had it. So both of these 2 pages are just a summary. And just to remind, there's a couple points you wanted to look at, and then you can go back to slide 8, which had the map and had all of the impact and mitigation measures listed out. Let's go to the next slide. So the project schedule and the next steps are probably a key for everyone. As Gord has mentioned, there has been some ongoing communication. So this is a summary of what we've done, where we are now, and what we're going to be doing, ensuring that there's communication throughout all of the process. So in the very beginning, there was a notice of commencement was put out door to door. Anyone living along Dickenson Road would have received that. And that notice of commencement was in 2019, was to say that we're moved to this detailed design, and then the construction phase will be following afterwards. A key one that Gord has mentioned a couple times was that notice of the private well survey. That was distributed, that notice, door to door. And as Gord has mentioned, if you didn't receive it, or you received but didn't participate and now would like to be part of it, there still is an opportunity. It has been going on for over a year, but we still have time before the construction. So if you're interested, at the very last slide that we'll get to, there's contact information for Tafik Amir from the city, and you can contact him to get a copy of that notice or to have yourself added to be able to be part of that private well survey. So while it was done and we targeted and distributed, we recognize that you may have missed it, may not have understood the importance of it. So there still is an opportunity to participate. We then also did, and through posting on the city's website, a notice of this public information center. The intent was to make sure to get kind of the broad, more than just people along Dickenson Road, but anyone in the area who wanted to participate and understand more about the project. That green arrow in the middle says we are here, and that's what we're doing. After that notice, we are now actually conducting this. You'll be able to get these slides. The whole presentation will be available, and we'd ask that you have a look at it, and if there's any additional comments that you think of, if you can forward those in the next couple weeks. From here, a lot of times people think, what happens and when do we get to construction? So we're looking at addressing any comments that we got, finalizing the details. Gordon indicated we're at 90% right now by September 2021. So comments will be addressed, the detailed design plans will be finished, and we'll put it out to a contractor and do a tender bid for somebody so that by September 2021, we'll be able to have a contractor. Then what we'll do is now you're going to start moving into much more of the specific construction. So we will post again on the city's website a notice of construction. That'll give you, we expect that'll probably happen in late 2021. That notice will tell you what kind of activities are going to be starting, what kind of a general timeline is. It's really to provide you information on the construction process and to give you contact information if you still have issues or concerns. Throughout the construction time, we will also do a notice of construction activities. As we move from one section, as Gord said, we move that compound or that work area. As we move things along, there may be different road closures. So you'll get door-to-door notification so that you're aware of what actually is happening, and specifically if you live along Dickenson Road, so that you can understand where the next closure is, where the work is proceeding, and a timeline for that as well. So that'll happen throughout the construction period, and we're looking at starting it in late 2021, early 2022, and construction totally complete by the end of or late 2025. Go to the next slide. This is the last slide. We wanted to thank everybody, recognizing that your time is very important to everyone. So we thank you very much for participating and listening in. We also recognize that you provide great and valuable input to us. So we have some of the questions that we're going to go through that were submitted ahead. We'll go through the questions that you may have now, and then any other ones that you want to submit. Here's the contact information for Tafik Amir with the city, and you can forward that to him. You can email to him any comments or questions. He'll forward it to Gord at IBI, and we can get back to you. We'll provide comments back. And that's what we're looking at doing throughout the summer, is responding to any comments that we've received and finishing off that detailed design. So we're not looking at this being the only point of, this is kind of the only point of direct input, but there's been other communications, and we're hoping that people continue on providing us input, and then we have that opportunity to also tell you what's going on through the notices. And those, how you can access everything is through the same way right now that you access the link for this public information center that was in that notice, and it gets you into, will also get you to where the presentation is and where project information is. Okay, so that's the end of our presentation. We've got another 50 minutes to be able to go through questions submitted and other questions. So I'll turn it over to Tafik Amir with the city to go through that with everyone, and we'll answer the questions that we can.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Gord, for this very good presentation.